Hi, fourth grade. Welcome back to Language Arts. I have my wonderful assistant, Olivia, here with me today. She's going to help me out with an iceberg experiment that we are going to show you. And if you want to do this at home, I will explain how you can do it. You only need a few supplies. You don't have to, but if you kind of want to take a closer look yourself and try it out yourself, feel free. So just like your little activity you did yesterday with getting familiar with the 3 classes on the Titanic, you do have to understand what icebergs are and why they are considered dangerous for ships and for passengers on board and how it actually sank the Titanic. So what I want you to do, first, let's talk about why the Titanic was considered unsinkable. We've talked about that, and that's something that you should be familiar with by now, but why was it? So the Titanic was considered unsinkable because at the very bottom of the ship, it had 16 special compartments or rooms that were specifically designed to hold water if for some reason water got in the Titanic. And if you think about an ice tray, if you have an ice tray at home, you want to hold that for me? Okay. If you think about an ice tray, you might not have ice trays at home because most of our freezers and refrigerators gives us ice cubes automatically when we want them. But an egg carton would also be a good visual for you to understand. If you put water into one compartment and you keep... Okay, you be my assistant. If you put water into one compartment, hold it down a little bit more. There you go. And you keep the faucet going, what's going to happen to the water? It's going to keep spilling over into the next compartment. So people thought the Titanic will never sink. Number one, because it has these amazing 16 special rooms that will hold all this water. And there's no reason why the Titanic would flood all of these rooms. And unfortunately, they were wrong, because when the Titanic hit the iceberg, it punctured a lot of holes into the side of the ship, and water just kept spilling in to all of these rooms, which if you imagine the Titanic, if this was the boat, it just caused it to keep sinking when it just sank to the bottom of the ocean. So that's why it's considered unsinkable. So what I'm going to do now is, so here's my little Titanic. This is the best ship I could find at my house. First, I'm going to show you what an iceberg would look like in the ocean water, and then I will show you how the Titanic hit the iceberg. So first, what is an iceberg? Can you answer that question? Do you know what?
A big ball of ice.
A big ball of ice, yeah. So Olivia, where would you find icebergs in the world? Would you find them here in Kentucky?
No.
No. Would you find them in the North Pole?
Yes.
Yes. So in the North and South Pole, there are these things called glaciers, and these are huge chunks of ice that could be as
big, like they can be like as tall as a building.
As tall as a building, even as tall as or as big as cities or in city blocks. They're huge. So what happens is sometimes little pieces of ice will break off of the glacier, and that little piece that breaks off is an iceberg, and then it starts floating and throughout the ocean and just kind of goes in its own path. And usually they might melt, or in this case a ship might crash into it. But that's how an iceberg is formed. So in April 1912, when the Titanic was setting sail, it was perfectly normal for them to be in iceberg waters. The captain knew that there would probably be icebergs, but what happens is when a ship is in an iceberg field, that's what it's called, when there's a lot of icebergs in an area where ships would go, they would send warnings to other ships saying, hey, if you're in this area, we've seen a lot of icebergs, so you might want to either slow down or go a different direction. That's usually what happens. For some reason, no one really knows for sure why, the captain did not do either of those things. I think he received about 9 iceberg warnings before it actually hit the iceberg from other captains and from other ships.
Mom, I watched a video and they said there were 8 iceberg warnings.
8 iceberg warnings. Thank you, Olivia. And so for some reason, the captain actually sped up the ship to make it go faster, and he did not change his course. So the ship was already going really fast, and it was in an area that had icebergs already. So do you remember that man, Bruce Ismay, that you learned about, the controversial guy that you were introduced to yesterday? So it's been speculated, it's not for sure, but a lot of people said that he pressured the captain to go faster, to arrive in New York earlier than expected, to surprise all the passengers, and to all the newspapers would say, wow, look at this ship, it arrived 1 day quicker, and everyone's so happy and excited. Yay Titanic, yay Captain Smith. That's not a proven fact, but it is something that if you've researched the Titanic, and especially how it hit the iceberg, that is something that comes up. So let's see if we're ready for our experiments. So let me see if I can flip myself around here. All right, so Miss Olivia, hold up. So here's my iceberg. It's very cold. Now for this activity, if you have a balloon, this works best. But I couldn't find any balloons at my house, so I actually just put water in a plastic bag and then rubber band the top of it. So just put a little water in a balloon or in a plastic bag and kind of seal off the top of it where, woo, it's starting to melt.
It's melting.
That's okay. That's okay. And then stick it in the freezer overnight. Do it before you go to bed, and it should be nice and frozen when you wake up the next day. Okay, so here's why icebergs can be so dangerous for ships. Olivia, will you please drop? For some reason, my camera will let me turn it around. I'll just have to lay on the floor. Okay, so you need an ocean. So for this activity, I just have 2 bowls. We'll see which one works the best. So once you have your iceberg in the ocean, you will see that a lot of it, can't really see it on my end, I'm just showing you. I want you to try it at home if you have the supplies. You will notice that most of the iceberg is below the water. And the reason that is because icebergs are so heavy. Good job. Yes. Look at my daughter learning Titanic things. It is so heavy.
We studied it at the end of, we started studying it at the first part of kindergarten.
Awesome. So icebergs are so heavy that most of it is underneath the water. So you can see right here, here's the surface of the water, and most of my iceberg is underneath the water. So if you are a captain, or if you are trying to move a ship or steer a ship, it's very hard to see what's underneath the water because you don't know what's underneath there, especially if you're really far away. Yeah, especially if you're really far away. So that's why icebergs are so dangerous, and that is the part of the iceberg that hit the Titanic. So Olivia, will you pick up the iceberg and will you move it to my bigger ocean? Let's see if that one works out a little bit better. Okay, however it goes is fine. Okay, and will you, I know your hands are going to be cold, can you hold the iceberg still and then move it back just a little bit more? There you go. Okay, so
Just hold it there?
yeah, just hold it because I don't want it to float away. So here's the Titanic. It was coming up on the iceberg, maybe like a little further away, beep, beep, beep. Okay, and then it realized, oh, there's an iceberg up there. So the people in the crow's nest, which is the part that is really up high where you can see further out, they said, there's an iceberg. And all the people who were in charge of steering the ship, they gave orders and they decided that they were going to stop the ship and slow it down, but that took a lot of time. And it tried to go around. Okay, can you just get your iceberg over towards you a little bit? Towards you, there you go. It went around the iceberg and it actually cleared the part of the iceberg that was on top of the water. But what happened was it hit the part of the iceberg that was on the bottom, underneath, what you could not see. And when it went across the iceberg, it made all of these holes, which unfortunately made all of those compartments flood. And that's what caused it to sink. So if you want to do this experiment at home, all you need, like I said, is a balloon or a plastic bag. Either one will work fine.
That's what you need the balloon for.
Yes. I didn't have a balloon. I think a balloon works best. So if you have one laying around or if you can find one, I couldn't find any, and there's not really any at Kroger. Every time I've been to Kroger to get my groceries, I've looked and they have been completely out of balloons. I think it's because of all the parades that have been happening through neighborhoods. So they're completely out of balloons, but if you can find some and if you're out and about safely, that's great. So you need that. Stick some water in it. You don't need just enough to inflate it or to give it an iceberg shape. Put it in the freezer. You need an ocean, so just a big bowl of water. We're doing this outside because there was some spillover, and we didn't want to get wet. We didn't want to get our kitchen table all wet, and it's a beautiful day outside.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. So you do not have to do this experiment. I just wanted to show you what happened and explain why icebergs are so dangerous to ships, especially, and what happened to the Titanic. After you are finished with this video, I have a link to an article that I want you to read. And you're gonna have to scroll to a couple pages to the section, I believe it's called Disaster Strikes. And that page explains all about how the Titanic hit the iceberg. It gives you a good picture of what the iceberg looks like in water. Yeah.
How did you know that the iceberg had holes at
The Titanic?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot about Titanic. I've just read a lot of information. And I just want you to read that page. You don't have to do any kind of writing assignment. I just want you to read it just so you can understand more about icebergs. If you want to read the entire article, go for it. I think it's very interesting. There was also a page that explained the 3 classes. So if you wanted to kind of do a little reading to learn more about the 3 classes that you've already learned about, you can.
When we're done, what are we going to do with this?
Whatever you want to do with it.
Throw it out?
Sure. So, and if you did not finish your 3 classes little field trip that you did yesterday, today is the day for you to finish that up. So, good luck. I hope you learned a little bit about icebergs today, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. Miss you.